بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى وصحبه أجمعين. So we're supposed to end at 4. So why don't we just read a little bit first, and then I'll leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for question and answer. So the next section, he calls it Natijatu dhikr, which natija is usually translated as outcome or result. And the only caveat to that, I think, in Arabic is natija doesn't necessarily mean a final outcome or a final result, because they would say هذا نتج عن هذا وهذا نتج عن هذا, so it's like a salsila, like a chain. So especially with dhikr, you'll find, as I think he'll mention here, that there is no sort of final outcome. It's continuous. There are continuous outcomes, depending upon who they are in their state, and so forth. So he's kind of talking about the nata'ij, yani, what comes after the other. So he says fasl. Fasl here, remember in the way that these texts were written, they did not have modern punctuation and table of contents and chapter headings and things like that. So the only way you knew one section started and the other one began is these words that were put in as markers. So fasl means section. So it's giving an indication that a new topic is beginning. And I think even the unwan is not his. This is the muhaqqiq, because I don't see Imam Abdullah al-Secondary saying the word natija. It's a very modern term. That's why I didn't feel comfortable with it when I saw it to begin with. Because shu natija, yani, what's the result of all this that you're telling us to do? What comes out of it? It doesn't fit in the pre-modern mindset, like the mindset of Imam Abdullah al-Secondary. Sure, take your time. Nataja and what?
And tanja. Succeed. Najah. I mean, the roots are different.
Yeah, there's a naظرية called al-ishtiqaq al-kabir, which means that if words generally that share, because Arabic words are triliteral roots, 3 letters, right? Or probably 90% of them. There's a few 4-letter, but most are 3-letter. So the ones that share 2 letters, and this was the theory of Ibn Jinni, who was a Persian linguist, and he said that there's something, what he called ishtiqaq al-kabir, or the great derivation. In other words, they're derived in similar meaning. So, for example, if you say something like the noon and the fa, you have words like nafaha, nafatha, nafaqa, nafasa, and they're all very similar. Nafasa means to breathe, nafakha means to blow into, nafatha also means to blow into, like when nafathati fil uqad, Surah Al-Falaq, nafaha, nafahat, nafaha also means like breeze. So they'll all have a similar theme of blowing or breathing and breezes and things like this. So it works for a lot of words, but sometimes it doesn't work either. So sometimes that connection is apparent, and sometimes it's not. Wallahu alam, it's a way of looking at things. So fasl, وَمَا مِن ذِكْرٍ إِلَّا وَلَهُ نَتِيجَةٌ تَخُصُّهُ. So there's not a type of dhikr, right? And this is what we call in Arabic the الإثبات بعد النفي. So وما من ذكر. So this type of ta'bir means there is, you are sort of making an absolute statement. So there, in other words, you're saying there is no dhikr except this. So all dhikr has this particular attribute to it. وما من ذكر إلا وله نتيجة تخص. Except it has a natija, a particular outcome that is specific to it. فأي ذكر اشتغلت به أعطاك ما فوقه. So depending upon the type of dhikr and the quality of the dhikr, there could be a particular effect, outcome on you, the person who is the dhakir. والذكر مع الاستعداد هو الداعي إلى الفتح ولكن بما يناسب الذاكر. So, dhikr مع الاستعداد, remembrance with استعداد, in other words, a preparation, or this comes from the words from يعني استفعل means to seek something, to request something, that particular form 10, and here it's looking to al-udda, and al-udda is like your if you're talking about a soldier, it's talking about his armor and his, his shield and things like this. If it's talking about a carpenter, it's talking about his saw and his hammer. So your udda is that thing which your kit that you need to be well prepared. So with dhikru ma'al isti'dad means that you are in a state of preparedness, right? So we all have to have a kit with us as dhakireen, as members of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that prepares us for this. For those two together, هو الداعي إلى الفتح. This is what enables, الداعي brings upon فتح, enlightenment. ولكن بما يناسب الذاكر, but in a way that is appropriate to the one who is performing the dhikr, the rememberer or the sahib al-dhikr. So the word fath, we could probably spend a few lectures about what that means. But obviously it looks like to opening, and it's not a physical opening. It's not talking about that, but it's a spiritual opening, and I use the word enlightenment, sort of. But it's seen as, all of us are on a journey towards a inevitable outcome, which is death, and then which is the taking of accounts, and then eventually the afterlife. So whether one acknowledges this reality or not, it doesn't matter, you're still on that journey towards that. But the ones who do make an acknowledgement of it and realize it before they die, and realize it in a way that enables them to live in the best manner possible for that inevitable outcome, we would say someone like that is in an enlightened state. هذا مفتوح له. They have a particular level of fath. And if the thing that prevents you from getting to this is your own self, in other words, your own lower passions and desires are encumbering to you. They encumber you and they burden you in a manner that prevents you from seeing this absolute reality. And so dhikr is the strongest method by which to overcome that nafs, to overcome the passions and lower desires of the soul. So the journey you're doing, you can think of it as two ways. There's a journey towards the next life, just a passing of time, and then you have the journey to overcome yourself. So when we say, you al-wasilun, those who have arrived or those who are traveling, you are traveling to elevate yourself above your own soul, above your own lower soul, above your own passions and desires, so that your passions and desires become those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of you, not the ones that are intrinsic to you, that are more animalistic in nature. Animalistic in the sense, you share them with animals. They also have the same desires and passions. But in them, it's completely instinctual and acceptable, because that's the way they're supposed to be. But in the human being, when those passions and desires take over, and then not only that, you use the faculty that you have been endowed with, namely your intellect, merely as a means by which to go and fulfill those passions and desires, we call that evil. We call that shar, when one goes to that length to do so. Someone who merely is following their passion and desires haphazardly and is not scheming and conniving in a way to fulfill them is not quite at the level of the evil of the one who does. That's why shaitan is so despicable, because he wants you to engage in your passions and desires, but he's a conniving and scheming being who goes about it in that way for you to reach that. That's why we have shayateen al-jinn wal-ins. We have shayateen who are jinn, and we have shayateen who are human beings, who actually operate in the same way, where they scheme and they connive and they manipulate and machinate and do all these things so that you can fall into that. So the fath is someone who's risen above that. And some of the ulama, they talk about how like this fath happens sort of an initial opening where it's like a spiritual realization where you kind of, you get it. And all of a sudden you realize that, wait, it's not important, all of this, what I'm thinking about now. What's important is the journey that I'm on and where I'm headed and what I need to do to prepare for that journey. So Imam Ibn Ata is saying, الذكر مع الاستعداد, those two. So not just remembrance, but doing everything else right, which puts you in a state of preparedness. هو الداعي. This is what will precipitate the fath. This is what will bring on the enlightenment. ولكن بما يناسب الذاكر, but in a way that's appropriate to the one who is making dhikr. So everyone has their own sort of way that it's going to go about for them, depending upon their level of ista'dad and their dhikr. قال الإمام الغزالي. So now he's quoting Imam al-Ghazali, who pretty much was the pioneer in articulating many of these concepts. And I say pioneer in articulating them, not in the one who actually innovated them, because our belief is they come from the Quran and the Sunnah, but in the way that they were articulated. That's the idea of tajdeed. Some of you may have heard the hadith of tajdeed, that على رأس كل مئة, at every 100 years Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to the ummah man يجدد لهم دينهم, who will renew their deen for them. So the renewal of the deen is not a reform. It's not breaking it up and putting it back together. But to me, it's a re-articulation of that which is already there in a way that's appropriate for the people of the time. So Imam al-Ghazali, he's generally acknowledged as the mujaddid of the 5th century of the Hijrah, because he was able to do several things. One of them was to put into the mainstream this idea of spiritual purification and articulate it in a way that appealed to a broad swath of people. Before that, it existed, but it was kind of marginalized in a sense, and some people were a little bit hesitant to follow that particular way because of their perceived lack of reconciliation with the Quran and Sunnah. But for Imam al-Ghazali, he was someone who was able to bring it right into the mainstream. So you'll find many of the ulama who came after him, like Ibn Ata al-Sakandari, like many of the, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Ali al-Haddad, the Haddad books, all of them virtually are completely reliant upon Imam al-Ghazali, and specifically the Ihya. So he's quoting from al-Ihya here, I believe. So قال Imam al-Ghazali, الذكر حقيقة, right? So he says, الذكر حقيقة. Dhikr, in reality, is. What is the Arab of حقيقة here? What is that? Why is that mansub? Huh? How's that mansub? What is that? I'll give them the extra credit prize if they get this one right.
Is it amal done by dhikr? Sometimes
الذكر حقيقة. Huh? No, tamiz doesn't really work here. Close. Getting close. Getting warm. They call it Naz' al-Khafid. Al-Khafid, which is the Kufi term, the Basri term is Jar al-Majroor, but because those were the two schools of grammar. Al-Khafid means that which, so really what it means to say, الذكر في الحقيقة, right? But when you take away al-khafid, then there's no longer a reason for it to be majroor. So instead of majroor, it becomes mansoob. It's kind of it's a little bit protracted and mutakallif, I would say, to be honest with you. But naza' al-khafid. So it means a dhikru fil haqiqa. Yani. That's why I said dhikr in reality. Yeah. So here Ghazali is not defining dhikr when he says haqiqatan. What he's doing is saying what is the sort of, lack of a better word, the metaphysical reality of dhikr. Really is what he's saying. He's not defining it like Ibn Atta did in the beginning. In other words, it's not a traditional definition, jama and mana, and has all the, no. But what he's saying is, when it happens, what is it supposed to do? Right? What's his dhikr supposed to do? What state should it bring about? This is what he's talking about. So he says, نمو استيلاء المذكور على القلب وانحماء الذاكر وخفاؤه. So namu means like a gradual gradation that's increasing. Istila il-madhkur. This is from the word istawla. Istawla ala shay. Right, to overcome it, to encompass it. Who's in madhkur? Allah, right? The one that's being remembered. Because it's ism maf'ul. Right? Ala al-qalb. Upon the heart, spiritual heart, وانحماء الذاكر وخفاؤه. What's انحماء? انمحاء, sorry. انمحاء الذاكر وخفاؤه. من محى يمحو, which means to erase. Yes. Right, to erase. So inmiha from infi'al means it's the reflexive receiver of that eraser action. So inmiha al-dhakir, in other words, a sort of erasure of the dhakir. Wa khifa'uhu. Khifa' man? Al-dhakir. So what's really saying is that the madhkur, namely the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, overcomes the heart so much that the you in you is no longer important. It becomes subtle and even erased. That's what he's saying. There's no more ana. Right? There's no more I did this, I need to do this, I want this. I need to have this now. So the sort of self-identification that is kind of the common thing that most people, how they operate, kind of is not leading them anymore. And now they're guided by the madhkur, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His encompassing of the heart of the believer. So he's describing an end state. In other words, he's talking about the ghaya. He's talking about what you're trying to reach. That's why I said haqiqatan, this is where you're going. That's where you're heading with it. قال ولكن له ثلاث قشور بعضها أقرب إلى اللب من البعض واللب وراء القشور الثلاث وإنما فضل القشور لأنها طريق إليه. So he's going with a paradigm of al-qishr wal-lub, which is something Ghazali does often, actually, in many other instances in the Ahya. Al-qishr is the outer peel or shell. So if you have a fruit and you like a what's that fruit in Malaysia where you have to peel it and then the thing is inside? It's called huh? No.
Jackfruit?
No.
Rambutan?
It's in Malaysia, Singapore. It's like it's a little bit red outside. Then it's like you peel it and inside is the thing that you eat.
Oh, tamarind.
No. Liechtenstein, is that what it's called?
Lychee.
Huh?
Lychee? Lychee.
Lychee. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, lychee. White inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, white. Yeah.
Yeah, the lychee.
It stains your clothes. Stains a little bit the outside.
Or like a nut. You know, like a walnut or, you know, where you don't eat the outside shell. What you're like trying to get to is the lub, which is the essence inside. So he's using this parable. So he said, لكن له ثلاث قشور. There are three outer shells, right, before you can get to this haqiqah, this essence we're talking about. بعضها أقرب إلى اللب من بعض. But each successive shell, some are closer to the meaning of the essence than others. So as you progress, as you break one shell, then the next one you're at is actually you're getting closer. It's not like you got to crack all three shells and then you've arrived. No, you're actually successively getting there. واللب وراء القشر الثلاث إنما أو فضل القشور لأنها طريق إليه. So the virtue of the shells, they're important because they're the way, they're the means by which you get to the essence. So they're also important. فالقشر الأعلى ذكر اللسان فقط. So the outermost shell, which he says الأعلى, outermost, not highest, but outermost, ذكر اللسان فقط, is the remembrance of the tongue only. That's the easiest too, right? Because that's the one you begin with. ولا يزال الذاكر يوالي الذكر بلسانه. ولا يزال. لا يزال means it's a continuous thing. And it kind of has a meaning of like not giving up. لا يزال. He's still, she or she is still going at it. ويتكلف إحضار القلب معه إذ القلب يحتاج إلى موافقته حتى يحضر مع الذكر. So, يتكلف من الكلفة, which means to strive and even be burdened by this continuous thing. What? إحضار القلب. Trying to achieve presence of the heart with the movement of the tongue. This requires takalluf. Why? Because anything related to the heart, right, means there's something that gets in the way, and that's your nafs. That's where the takalluf is. So, but if you can break the first barrier, which is to just start doing it with your tongue, don't be lazy, and tell yourself, well, it's not going to work anyway, my heart's not into it, what's the point? Nah, try. And then when you do, you've broken the first shell, the first barrier. Right? And then what comes after will be easier. But there's going to be takalluf. There's going to be a time of where it's burdensome. فيتكلف ويتكلف إحضار القلب معه إذا القلب يحتاج إلى موافقته حتى يحضر مع الذكر. What does that mean? The heart needs what? موافقة of what? To be in accordance or congruence with what? Right, what the movement of the tongue. حتى يحضر مع الذكر. Until it becomes in tune, present with the remembrance itself. So when one says, Subhanallah, 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 it's not just saying it, but you think about what's Subhanallah, what's that mean? How can I have my heart in that? You know, I'm affirming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above and beyond all that is around us. It's not even appropriate for me to think of him in terms of what I see in my own frame of reference. Subhanallah. And think about that meaning. Then the heart has the presence. وَلَوْ تُرِكَ وَطَبْعُهُ لَاسْتَرْسَلَ فِي أَوْدَيَةِ الْأَفْكَارِ إِلَى أَنْ يُشَارِكُ الْقَلْبُ اللِّسَانِ ويحرق نور القلب الشهوات والشياطين ويستولي ذكره فيضعف ذكر اللسان عند ذلك وتمتلئ الجوارح والجوانح بالأنوار. So let's take that step by step. So وَلَوْ تُرِكَ وَطَبْعُهُ, so if it is left, in other words, the dhikr of this lisan, وَطَبْعُهُ, and its normal state, طبع means the normality of it, the normalcy, لَاسْتَرْسَلَ فِي أَوْدِيَةِ الْأَفْكَارِ. Right? Istirsal means to sort of let loose. In the awdiya, which is the plural of wadi, which is valley, right? So it's a type of metaphor. Awdiyat al-afkar, in the valley of extraneous thoughts. Here he says afkar, but he's talking about thoughts that are not relevant. So if you don't work on your heart at the same time, you might be saying it, but you're thinking about all sorts of things. You're all over the map, so to speak. You're not concentrating. إلى أن يشارق القلب اللسان, except you get to the point, if you do have this strong remembrance, يشارق القلب اللسان, then there will be a participatory element of the heart with the tongue. ويحرق نور القلب الشهوات والشياطين ويستولي ذكره. So what happens then? The light of the heart, يحرق, burns the shahawat. Those passions, those lower desires are burned. They're no longer there. والشياطين, right? And the whisperings of the shayateen. ويستولي ذكره. And then his dhikr overcomes all of that, takes over. فيضعف ذكر اللسان عند ذلك. But at this point, the remembrance of the tongue becomes weaker. Why? Because the remembrance of the heart is stronger. Because the remembrance of our heart is stronger. وتمتلئ الجوارح والجوانح بالأنوار. Right? So the limbs and that relating to the limbs become full of light. So the limbs now, how is a limb full of light? It follows that which is in the heart, the meanings that are in the heart. ويتطهر القلب من الأغيار. يتطهر is purified, من الطهارة. القلب, the heart, من الأغيار. What's الأغيار? The plural of غير, which can't really have a plural of. So this is kind of a specific term, right? Because غير we usually use in like a, ذهب التلاميذ غير أحمد, like you use it like إلا. But here, they use it as the plural form. الأغيار means everything غير الله. Right? Because غير wants إضافة, right? Yes? You can't just say أنا غير or هو غير, you want an إضافة. غير المغضوب عليهم, right? So it needs an إضافة. So the original مضاف إليه is لفظ الجلالة, مضاف is لفظ الجلالة, or the word Allah. So غير الله. So الأغيار means everything besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So يتطهر القلب من الأغيار. So being busy with thinking about everything else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a goal, right? To not be busy with those things. So you become purified of it with the dhikr of the tongue, with the heart. وينقطع الوسواس. Right? And recurrent misgivings and waswas are cut off or cease. ولا يسكن بساحته الخناس, اللي هو مين? Iblis, right? من شر الوسواس الخناس. الخناس is one of the names of Iblis, لعنه الله. ويصير محلا الواردات. And then it becomes a proper receptacle for al-waridat. Al-warid, same word as wird. So you have wird and warid. So warid would be what form of the word? Not Ismail, someone else. Ism al-fa'il, right? And wird is like the masdar or ism al-masdar. So al-warid means that which brings to you the wird. Tamam? So plural, waridat. And wird actually in the language actually means the watering hole that animals used to go to. So that which you go back and forth to survive. But here we're talking about spiritual survival, not physical survival. So the wird is that which you are inspired to do as a result of the warid. لولا وارد لما كان ورد. If there's no warid, there's no wird. So the warid means the thoughts and the inspirations that come to you to do certain things. And all of us, in one form or another, have probably experienced this sometime or other. So, you know, you're walking down the street and you just get this inclination all of a sudden, you know what, I want to help this person in some way, or, you know, or I want to, tonight I'm going to pray tahajjud, or, you know, these are types of waridat. And these waridat, they bring with them the wird. So the warid is the thought. It's the khatira that comes to mind, to your heart. And then the wird is the actual thing that it's telling you to do. And, you know, our ulama, their belief is that these waridat are kind of like in the air. They circulate. And they're nafahat. ألا في أيام دهركم لنفحات ألا فتعرضوا لها. Right? There's nafahat, these spiritual breezes all around. And they look for receptacles. That's why he's saying mahallan lil-waridat. If you're not a proper receptacle for it, it has the effect of it goes and leaves. It bounces off. Because you're not a proper receptacle. You know, the bee will go to things that it can use to make honey. So it looks for the nectar and the flowers and things like that. It might buzz around the garbage can, but it's going to find, wait, there's nothing here that I need. Nothing here that I can use. And it goes away. So these nafahat, these waridat, look for the proper receptacle. And if it doesn't find the proper receptacle, it just goes. So we have to avail. How do we avail ourselves? This way. By purifying ourselves from the aghyar, from the busyness with other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we become a mahal, become a place and a receptacle للواردات. ومرآة صقلية للتجليات والمعارف الإلهيات وإذا سر الذكر إلى القلب وانتشر في الجوارح ذكر الله كل عضو بحسب حاله. So he uses some very poetic language here. So he uses the parable of the mirror and the polishing of the mirror. So the mir'at, saqliyat is the polishing. So it becomes like a mirror that is polished. Lil tajalliyat, for the tajalli. And the thing that is jali is the opposite of khafi. Al-jali is the thing that is manifest and present. So tajalliyat are the divine manifestations of Allah's names and attributes. So when you see things in creation that are happening and you say, Subhanallah, that's a manifestation. Allahu al-Razzaq, Huwa al-Qawi, Huwa al-Mateen, Huwa al-Rahman, Huwa al-Rahim, Huwa dhul jalali wal ikram. So you see these manifestations and they become mutajalli. They become apparent to you. Because you can't see them with your eyes, you can only see them with your heart. But in order for those things to become apparent, again, the heart has to be a proper receptacle. So the warid and wird are things more about action, doing specific deeds, actions, things like this. At-tajalliyat are spiritual realizations, openings that come to you from the polished mirror. Wal-ma'arif al-ilahiyat, right, and the divine secrets المعارف الإلهيات وإذا سر الذكر إلى القلب, right, and if the dhikr penetrates to the heart, وانتشر في الجوارح, and disseminates and spreads in the limbs, ذكر الله كله. So here, where's the فاعل and مفعول and فعل? إيش مستتر? There's no مستتر here. أيوة, كله is the فاعل. So كله. So كله, all remember Allah, because Allah is not the one who's remembering here. It's everyone. كله what? This needs an إضافة. كل عضو. Every limb remembers Allah بحسب حاله, according to its state. So every limb has a particular way of remembering Allah according to its state. Who was able to do all of this and encompass all of this, and every limb remembers Allah in each state? Only one man ever lived able to do it completely. Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everyone else, that's the exemplar. How did the limbs make dhikr? How did the heart make dhikr? How did everything work all together in this comprehensive manner? هذا هو Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we'll stop here, inshallah, if people have questions or comments. Safe.
So as far as the appropriateness of certain zikrs for certain people, do you need a shaykh to give you the zikr? Or, for instance, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani suggested do La ilaha illallah 200,000 times or something. That was appropriate for everyone, but then you need a shaykh to give you additional.
There are the adhkar associated with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are there, in the hadith, like a book like Al-Adhkar al-Nawawi or some of the sections of Al-Ahya and so forth. You don't need anyone to sort of instruct you on how to do those. They're there for specific times, when you put on clothing, when you look in the mirror, when you go out the door, when you enter the mosque. These are all general type of adhkar. And also included in that would be a sabah wal masa. The litany he used to do in the morning and in the evening are also recorded. And that doesn't need a particular shaykh or anything like that. There are things that are more specific that are associated with some of the shuyukh that you can think of them as a specific subset of what came from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Because generally speaking, most of their awrad you can find somewhere in the Sunnah itself, especially the major turuq like Qadiriyya you mentioned, and the Shadhiliyya and Naqshbandiyya and so forth. But those, you can also say them. You can take the word Imam al-Shadhili, which is very simple. You just say Astaghfirullah 100 times and the Salah on the Prophet 100 times and La ilaha illallah 100 times. And that was his main wird, or is his main wird. But there's a certain type of blessing and barakah when you take it from the salsila, when you take it from that chain of transmission going back to the original Imam al-Shadhili or Imam Abdul Qadir Jilani and so forth. That's one aspect. Another aspect is there are certain types of awrad that you can think of them as kind of prescription level awrad. There's certain over the counter, you can just go get it, Panadol, Tylenol, and so forth. But other types that kind of need a supervision of the shaykh, because they can have some very powerful effects on people, and so it's better for that, those specific ones to kind of be under their supervision. But by no means would I say to anyone that you need to have a shaykh to do dhikr. No, you don't need that. You can do it. There are people who follow that. That's also a good thing when it's done properly, right? Because just like we have good doctors and well qualified, we have quacks too. So the same thing in this paradigm. So there's a little bit of weariness, especially in the age that we live in now, with such a dearth of people who are actually qualified to do anything that has to do with religion. So it's not a kind of an open encouragement, but at the same time, we don't, disavow that. It's there, it exists, and it will exist till the, to the end of days. So we know it's there, but you don't need it specifically to to do the dhikr he's talking about here. So. You have a question?
I know we're out of time, but can you quickly cover the other shells? You talked about 3 other shells, right? We covered the song, and unless you're going to do that later.
Maybe we'll do that tomorrow morning or something, because he actually gets into. I don't know if actually Ghazali, because he's quoting from Al-Ghazali. Because I remember reading it in Al-Ghazali himself. Because I think he goes the order, it's with the tongue, and then tongue and heart is the second, and then the last and the highest level is the heart only. So each one is successive getting into, from one shell to the next. So I'll try to find an appropriate section in Ghazali and see if we can try to do that. Yes? Thanks so much. No, those names at the end of the word, usually that's making a supplication dua for those people who are in the salsila. So it's actually praying for them, which is perfectly permissible and even recommended for any Muslim.
So my question is along the line of Scott's. Same thing for the dua. Can you make the Prophet's dua at time if you're going through hardships?
I don't see why not. Why not?
So you can repeat the exact.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
You said about getting prescription. If we want to get prescription, who should we go? Here.
You should go to a properly qualified.
You have to be a little bit more specific.
No, I can't be more specific.
You're asking for a referral?
I'm just a GP. I don't send referrals. Things like that, to be honest with you, it's not like it's not you finding them; it's them finding you. It's something it's a rizq. It's your sustenance that you may have heard a particular scholar or shaykh, and everyone's great with him, but he may not be for you, and the opposite may be true. Maybe someone who's for you is not for someone else. So that type of relationship is something that. If you're sincere enough, it will make itself clear to you sooner or later. So.
What you seek seeks you.
Right. What you seek seeks you. Rumi. طيب, I guess جزاكم الله خير, بارك الله فيكم. أسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يوفقنا جميعا وأن يلهمنا الصواب والرشد، أن يوفقنا لطاعته وذكره ويعيننا على ذكره وشكره وحسن عبادته، وأن يفرج على المسلمين في كل مكان، في الشام وفي مصر وفي تونس وفي ليبيا وفي أفغانستان وفي باكستان وفي بورما وفي السودان وفي سائر بلدان المسلمين، وأن يجعل آخر كلامنا في الدنيا لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا والحمد لله رب العالمين. So we'll see you tonight.